Hello, this is Brave New History. I wanted to make a quick video on how it seems to me mythicists are often a bit like Christian apologists. So, a big one for me that stands out is Isaiah 53. Uh, Essentially, no one believes that's messianic, right? Early Christians didn't really argue using Isaiah 53 in terms of their apologetics. And so it's one of those things that mythicists will key in on, as well as apologists, just like what's ever convenient for their argument to latch on to Isaiah 53. It's used by both Christian apologists and mythicists. And another similarity is wildly unlikely claims about early Christianity. So just like apologists will use um, the authorship of the Gospels, so Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John wrote those Gospels, and they wrote them before 70 A.D. That's wildly unlikely. Maybe there's some scholars that believe that, but certainly next to nobody believes that. And on the other end of things, well, on the mythicist side, we've got people that believe in mystery school origins for Christianity. So there's certain similarities or striking similarities between Christianity and mystery schools. Um, a lot of, the legend around Jesus looks a lot like mystery school, but not one scholar believes in mystery school origins for Christianity, or no legitimate scholar. Certainly no Scottish scholars, just kidding. But so, yeah, and it's those are often like Isaiah 53 and mystery school origins are something weirdly that mythicists will fight for, which I would advise not to, because it's incredibly clear those two aren't winners. And then there's the whole words don't mean what you think they do, eisegesis kind of thing. Like, so eisegesis, putting meaning into the word, right, as opposed to taking meaning out of the text, right? So in, what is it, First Samuel, where they say that God got David's semen and beamed it up to the cosmic sperm bank. Might have been orbiting the moon at the time. Would Nobody takes that meaning from the text, but you need it somewhere, right, to make a case for it, right? So that's one thing that they'll do. And so, like William Lane Craig, he'll do this thing where there's objective and subjective, and then objective is independent of human minds, right? Human minds, and we pick that definition. So God's opinion is going to be objective, even though it's opinion, right? So we could have kittens, right? They're not human. Their opinion is objective, right? And then the aliens aboard the cosmic sperm bank station, they're aliens. They're not human, so they're objective, right? So just like William Lane Craig does that, we have ginomai, right? Which it can mean born, right? It can mean like come into being. Like a person can come into being, they can be born, poetic, flowery language, right? And they want to say that it means manufactured, a concept that won't exist for over 1,000 more years is what it really means, because it means manufactured, like aboard a cosmic space station with sperm bank aboard it. That's what it means. I don't know. You should find a Koine Greek dictionary that says that. So there's nothing about in being in outer space, right? It doesn't mean manufactured, right? Comes to be, like comes to pass, right? can mean born, but never means manufactured in outer space. And like, we'll want to smuggle that in, just like William Lane Craig is smuggling in human mind into the definition for objective. And then there's this Matt Slick thing with, oh, well, you don't understand. If you understood, then you would agree. But like, you don't understand mythicism. You don't understand the minimal mythicist argument, right? Like, as so, just like Matt Dillahunty says, you don't have to be or I think he's the one who said that. You don't have to be. Maybe it was Dawkins. But in any case, you don't have to be an expert on leprechauns. Maybe it was Aaron Ra. You don't have to be an expert on leprechauns to refute leprechauns, right? These ideas are just silly, right? So there's First Thessalonians, right? We have to make that well. So when Paul talks about Jews causing the death of Jesus, right? That can't happen, right? Because you would need you need a good reason to believe that there's, Jewish people up on this space station orbiting the moon with the sperm banks, and but there's not, right? And so you have to say that's interpretation, although we know it's not, right? And it's often misinterpreted to say, well, there's disagreement out there, right? There's not, right? I think it was F.C. Bauer that suggested that was an interpolation, right? But it's the consensus that's real, and for many reasons. It's very Pauline. We can get into that first we're justified, right? So we're not saved once we believe on Jesus. We're not saved at that point. We're justified, and then after the judgment is when is when we're saved, and until then God's wrath keeps on increasing. So this is incredibly Pauline, right? And and then of course we have the chiasms, right? Which I'm going to make a whole video on that in depth. How we have the chiasms, and it needs to be there, right? It doesn't work without it. And then everything kind of being pushed over. So Paul likes to reiterate ideas, and everything is kind of reiterated in the next chapter there. So yeah, that is legit. That's interpolation, that's not an interpolation. But mythicists need it to be, right? So it can't. You just have to dismiss the evidence. Another thing, and mythicists will go crazy when I say this, right? So when we go against the overwhelming majority of scholars, right? So not one, well, maybe one or two scholars believe that, Mark wrote Mark, John wrote John, right? It's not the consensus view. And just like mythicism, overwhelmingly, right? The overwhelming majority of scientists believe in evolution, right? Believe in global warming. And now a mythicist is going to be on the other end of that, saying, no, you can't trust you can't trust the scholars, you can't trust academics, they are biased, right? And I know the argument is, well, they're in like a religious field, right? So they would be biased, right? So that's something to consider, right? But you have to admit, you're on the other side of all the scholarship, right? So yeah, so it reminds me a lot of Christian apologetics, and I just see mythicists getting very worked up in conversation about historicity. You have to dismiss everything historical about the Gospels, right? Or else, we're done. every piece under mythicism, you have to have it go your way. Like we have, like Jesus has to be made, put into, taken from myth into history somehow, right? And they'll say this is mystery cult, right? Which no legitimate scholar believes, right? But you have to believe it to be a mythicist. And all these verses that put Jesus in history, they have to be interpolations. If you have one of them that's not, it's fatal to mythicism, right? So you have to say, well, nope, ignoring that, ignoring that, ignoring that, ignoring that. Nope, we're going to ignore that. That's not real. You sound like an apologist because, I mean, you kind of really are, right? So a lot of mythicists, right, are former Christians, and they've come to an understanding that a lot of the Christian claims are not legitimate, right? And then we keep arguing. I mean, that's legit. A lot of what was understood to be real is not. A lot of the claims are not real. But then instead of looking to understand the full picture of, okay, what did happen, right? We've determined that Jesus didn't happen and are looking for reasons to believe that. That's my opinion, right? Whereas we can look at, well, what did Jesus do? Where did Jesus come from? Is there evidence for Jesus? Absolutely there is, 100%, right? But we wanted to keep pushing the envelope to say he didn't even exist. And also, Paul didn't exist, and probably Clement didn't either, and probably the first Christian that probably existed is I don't know, probably Calvin. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, it just sounds like apologetics to me. So if you're a mythicist and something I'm off about, which I'm sure you're going to find something that you disagree with, but yeah, let me know. And yeah, have an awesome day, especially my mythicist friends. All right, we'll see ya.